Hey friends, in this one we're going to be talking about some clean and quick color correction tips in Adobe Premiere. Hi everybody, I'm Noah from Hacking Hollywood. Let's jump right into the tutorial. And like with most of the things, trash in is trash out. So if you can, try to get your settings right in camera as much as possible. Get your exposure nailed, get your white balance set correctly, get those things done ahead of time so that there's less work in post-production. What we're talking about today is a simple and quick way to kind of adjust all of your clips so that you have a clean, simple, and easy way to match all your clips in Adobe Premiere. So the first thing we're gonna do is go into color. So I have a preset here, and that's gonna bring us into this color mode. You'll see on my right side of the screen here, we have Lumetri Color pulled up. And then in the top left box, I'm gonna go ahead and click on Lumetri Scopes. Depending on your experience, you may know nothing about scopes or you might know a ton. So we're gonna try to keep this simple and just focus on these two scopes here. It's our vector scope YUV, which is on the left, and then our parade, which is an RGB parade. So what do these do? Well, this scope shows you the saturation or the intensity of the saturation in your image. So you'll see that there are some yellows and reds that are outside of this little boundary line. And that's because these lights are nice and saturated. They have a lot of pop to them and they're really interesting. If I jump to another sequence here, you'll see there are some reds that are sticking out, but not as many yellows. And that's probably because of the mouse that's in here. So LED lights tend to really push values that you see on this. So keep that in mind if you have any sort of LED in the background of your image, that might affect the way this graph looks. So coming back to this first sequence, I can tell you right away, the white balance is pretty spot on here. It's pretty solid. And we can tell that by two things. One would be the way the image looks. If it looks a little bit blue or a little bit yellow, it means that it's slightly out of white balance. Another way we can tell is by looking at the RGB parade. We have the three colors, red, green, and blue. And so you'll see that they're roughly about even of each other. We might actually see a little bit more red than we do blue, but especially in these midtones, these lower midtones here, in the body of the colors, they're pretty well balanced. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you something that doesn't look as good, that might not be set to the right color balance. So let's go ahead and move the slider here towards blue. So you'll see that the blue parade is now a lot bigger and the red is a lot smaller. Now we can go the opposite direction and we can really extend the red and show you what that looks like compared to the blue. So really it's a balancing act between blue and red tones. Quick tip here, I know this is getting deep into the weeds, but RGB, red, green, and blue are the three colors that a camera records in a number value. So they have 0 to 255 in most cameras, and then higher end cameras have a larger scale, which gives you more dynamics like a 10-bit image or a 12-bit image. And that scale of color is what is actually showing up in this parade, which is kind of cool. So again, we're gonna bring that value back. We can kind of look at each of these parades and kind of balance out between the two colors. And then you could also kind of flavor this to taste. And so if you personally prefer an image that's a little bit warmer, you can do that there. And we're not going to get into really the fine tuning stuff here because again, this is just speedy way of color correcting. So we're going to look at our parades, we're going to balance this out, and we're going to keep moving. If you want a full tutorial and a deep dive into color correcting, let me know, leave a message in the comments below. I would love to jump in deep if there are people interested in hearing and seeing about it. So the next thing we'll look at after we've kind of adjusted our white balance point and make sure things are pretty well balanced here, we're going to look at our tint. And the tint is between purple and green. So I'm specifically looking at skin tones and trying to make sure there's not too much of a green hue or a purple hue as I move that slider back and forth. And I'm going to try to adjust that so that it lands at a neutral tone over skin tones. Next thing we'll do is go down to saturation. And like I said, it's kind of hard to tell with this vector scope because of those LEDs. So if I wanted to, I could mask out these LEDs just to show me where the numbers land on here. Long story short, you want to try to have your values go up until about the border here without crossing outside of this line. This border is kind of like broadcast safe. And obviously not every shot's going to be exactly like this, especially if you're creating a sort of mood or tone for your shots. But generally speaking, if you get white balance dialed in pretty well, if you get the saturation set where it's not oversaturated and not undersaturated, that will help you as well. So to adjust the saturation, it's going to be on the slider right here. In my case, I don't really need to add too much, maybe 5%, and we're gonna keep moving. So there are some creative ones that you can do here through Lumetri Color. We're gonna go ahead and skip down to curves. Now this is the one that's gonna make a huge difference. We're gonna look at our RGB parade once more. Because we have a white lantern behind me and because of the Christmas trees, we do have a few points that are overexposed or really bright. And that's okay, that's not quite what we're focused on. If this was a film or something that we really wanted to try to preserve those highlights in, we totally could. And obviously in the shot that I have today, I've since framed out that overhead light that was overexposed. But what we want to do in the curve setup is adjust three things: the highs, mids, and the lows. So I would suggest start with the highs and try to either preserve the highlights if something's overblown or too bright, or extend the highlights if something is too dark. And once again, going back to what we said earlier, we try to get it right in camera, but this is something we can do if we have to. So let's say we're trying to preserve the highlights. I would basically bring this down. I am looking at my RGB parade currently, and I'm looking at the values. We'll see that as I pull this down, we try to save some of the greens that were clipped, and if we go low enough, we'll even see the blues come back. Now, if I bring this all the way down until it shows that it's back onto the graph, we can look at the detail and the space where we know it's overblown, like I said in the China bowl, and really we're not getting any detail back from doing this. If we look at the curves, you might get detail back up until about the halfway point between the line and this other line here. Depending on what camera you shot at, and if you shot in RAW, you might be able to pull back even more. So if you're trying to save some highlights that might be overexposed, that would be about as far down as I would go, because if something's more exposed than that, then you probably lost the detail on it anyway. I'm not worried about that highlight, so I'm actually going to do the opposite effect, where I'm going to extend my dynamic range, my highlights, and I'm going to be looking specifically at the greens here, because I know reds are kind of spread across because the red's in here. And I'm gonna basically extend this green so that the image looks a little bit brighter overall. So let's go ahead and try that. So you'll see now we're hitting highlights on my face, on my nose, and that's losing detail. So I've pushed it too much. So when you're brightening an image or exposing an image, make sure to look back at your skin tones and your subject to make sure that you're not blowing out details that should be there. So in this case, we're gonna meet back in the middle, and really the way we exposed it and the way we shot it was pretty accurate and pretty good. I know in my case, I didn't really move the highlights. I just wanted to show you what it looked like to bring it down and to push it up. But now we're going to actually move the shadows or the baseline here. So if we move to the bottom of the curve, we can click and add a dot here as well. And now we're going to be looking at the bottom half of our RGB. So basically 0 means absolute black. So anything above this value is not absolute black. So I'm going to go ahead and push down the reds and the blues, really everything together until we get close to 0. I understand I'm going to be losing a little bit of detail in the blue channel because of this, but that's okay. This is supposed to be a quick and simple color correction. So I'm going to be pushing that now until we see those hit, and that's pretty close. And if I deselect it and select it back on, you'll see it just pulls our shadows and makes the contrast a little bit better without going crazy. The final thing I'll do is I can add a midpoint boost, and especially for my skin tones, this might be nice to kind of boost that back up and give me a little bit of pop separate from the background and from everything else. And so when we're done, it's just a little slight correction, but that little bit makes a world of difference. So to review, we white balanced, brought everything into the right exposure. We made sure the saturation wasn't off the charts. Then we looked at our curves for the highlights, shadows, and then midtones to balance everything out. And really, we're just maximizing the color space and the graph that we have so that the images look as good as they can for this quick and dirty tutorial. Hey, if you want to learn more about editing, you can check out this Ninja playlist here, and we will see you in the next one.